Hey everyone, I'm Kloo, and welcome to my vanilla command hub, where I've been using all different command block systems to create different features for vanilla Minecraft. Most of these are RPG elements and part of a larger project I'm calling RPG Craft. But the one we're going to talk about today is probably the one you're most interested in, if you did click on this video, and that is the ability to double jump. So I came up with a pretty fluid system to implement double jumping into vanilla Minecraft through command blocks. And the way it works is we're placing a barrier block underneath the player just for a split second so that they can jump off it. And because of this, it doesn't impede things like falling or flying, and it just creates an all-around very fluid and dynamic feeling system. I've also got a second version called skywalking, which is more continuous, and if you can time the jumps correctly, you can jump infinitely. If you do mess up, though, you fall straight down through. But anyway, we'll get to the tutorial part, so let's jump into a different world. Right, here we are, on a nice flat world for us to do our building. So all we're going to be using is repeating command blocks. It's all you're going to need for our double jump system, and there's two halves to the system. The first half is a scoreboard system. It's going to detect whenever the player jumps and set up a little timer for us to work off of. The other system is a block placement system that's going to use said timer to place a barrier block underneath the player and delete it, allowing them to quickly double jump and fall back through. So first off, we're going to create a line of command blocks, 5, then we're going to leave a 5 block space and add a 6 command block. This is going to be our scoreboard half, and then for our block placement half, we only need 5 command blocks. The reason I have separated the two is because obviously we're going to build it one half at a time, but once everything is built, we're going to need to turn them on in the correct order, so down the line. So starting off with the scoreboard system, we're going to create 2 different scoreboards. So the first scoreboard we're going to add is called JumpCheck, and just like its name says, it's going to check anytime the player jumps. So for this, we're going to use the minecraft.custom. So all of these objectives are the statistics. So anytime a player breeds an animal, flies 1 centimeter, I assume that's what aviate means, these objectives are going to update. So if we scroll down, we can look for the one we obviously want, called jump. So every time the player jumps, this scoreboard's going to add 1 to itself. That's our first scoreboard. Our second scoreboard we're going to use is just going to be called jumped. And we're going to use the dummy objective this time. The dummy objective can only be edited using commands or command blocks, making it perfect to set up timers. So we've got our 2 scoreboards set. Now we have to actually make our timer mechanism. So the first one we're going to use is scoreboard players set. We're going to target any player who has a jump check score greater than 1. So any player who's jumped, it's going to set their jump score to -10. So -10 is a 10 tick interval in accordance to our timer system. So the next part of the timer system is obviously to start the counting mechanism. So for this, we're going to use scoreboard players, but this time we're going to use add. So we're going to add at all jumped 1. So what this means is every tick, every player's jumped score is going to go up by 1, meaning once it's set to -10, it's going to count back up to positive numbers. So now we have to add a limit to it. So once more, scoreboard, players, but this time we're going to use set once again, and we're going to target certain players. So using our square brackets, we can input a selector parameter, so scores, and this time we're going to use jumped, equal to 1 ... So these 2 ... mean equal to or greater than. Essentially, we're creating a range. So for instance, the range right now is 1 to infinite. If you were to put, say, 5, it would be 1 to 5. Put the dots on this side, you could do less than or greater than, and you could input a different integer. So scoreboard players set, any player whose jump score is greater than 1, we're going to set jumped back to 1. So what this means is we've created 2 states, a state in which the jump scoreboard is going to count back from -10, and a state at which it's locked at 1. So we're going to use these 2 states to create our block placing system. The last scoreboard command we need to set up is going to be our jump check reset. So scoreboard, players once more, this time reset. So at all, again, we're going to add in our selector with scores, curly brackets, and this time we're typing in jump check. So any player whose jump check score is greater than 1, it's going to reset jump check. So what this means is we're creating a single pulse in which the game checks if the player is jumping. So we can go ahead and turn these all on now. And make sure everything's functioning as it should. And if we add the scoreboard to our little sidebar, so set display, sidebar, jump check, you can see sometimes, if you're quick enough, can I get to appear again? So you might see it flashing over here every now and then. So what this shows us is that it's working correctly, and it's essentially a quick little pulse that tells all the command blocks we have that the player is jumping. The other scoreboard that we set up, objective, jumped, you can see it gets set to -10 and then counts all the way to 1. So it's creating those two states. One state where it's counting, and one state where it's locked at 1. These are very important for our block placement system. I'm going to go ahead and turn these all back off, because like I mentioned before, it is important that you turn them on in the correct order for it to function as it should. These first two, not so important, because once they're added to the game, it doesn't really matter. But everything else, very important. So, onto our block placement system. So these commands are going to be quite a bit longer, but very simple. So I'm going to put them all in, and then we'll go through them one by one. Okay, all done. Important thing to note is, essentially, these two commands are almost identical. Same with these two, and we'll go over why in just a second. So the first command we're looking at is execute at. So we're executing at any player who has a jump score less than -1. So we're detecting if that jumped scoreboard is in that counting state. So if it is, it's going to detect if there's an air block underneath them. So if block player's coordinates, these little squiggly lines, -1 on the Y to detect one block underneath them. And we're using air, so it's only going to try and fill in or allow them to double jump if there is an air block underneath them. Then we're just using run, set block. Again, the one -Y coordinate below them. And of course barrier blocks, because barrier blocks are invisible to the majority of players. And then we're using keep. So keep is important because it makes sure that the double jump can't delete any blocks in the world, and therefore isn't damaging to the actual gameplay. Okay, the next two commands are almost identical. So we're executing at any player who has a positive jump score. So that's that second state we talked about. And then it's going to run a fill command. So around the player's coordinates, we're going 15 blocks in every direction except the Y. So on one hand, we're going at the player's Y coordinate down to -30. And we're replacing every block with air. And then we're using the replace tag and barrier. So this filters all the blocks and makes sure that air only replaces barrier blocks. The reason we're doing the Y coordinate to -30 is because in this one we're doing the Y coordinate to +30. What this creates is two half domes, essentially, or half circles around the player. This is very important because if the player's at the height limit or down at bedrock, these commands won't function. If the command tries to put any blocks outside of the building parameters of Minecraft, so the height limit or the void, the command will not run, and therefore it won't actually clean up the barrier blocks around us, which is very important. So that's why we split up into two half circles. The last two commands are very similar to these two, with one slight difference. So we're executing at any player. There's no longer a score check, and we're only checking if there's a block 0.00001 below them. So this is very important. What this is the collision detection. So in a game like Minecraft, anytime you walk onto a block, you actually sink a little bit into the block. And this is the game checking if you are colliding with the block and therefore running, you know, that's solid. If it's air, you fall through it. If it's cobwebs, you sink through it. All those different features. So we're just detecting if the player collides with a barrier block. So if block this, what is that? 10th, 100th, 1000th, 10,000th, a lot of things that I can't say properly, below the player barrier block, it's going to run our same fill command that we separate into two half domes. So that's exactly the same as before. We've got one that's till 30 positive and one till 30 negative, all from the player. So again, creating those two half domes. This collision check is very important because it makes the jumping feel a lot more fluid and gives them only a split second to re-input a jump and actually double jump before the block is deleted. So I will put all 5 command blocks in chat and let you mull over them for a second. Right, so here they are in the correct order. So command set, and then this is what you're inputting into your command block. I will try to put them in the description as well to make it easier. But everything is good to go now, so we just have to turn them on in that correct order. So starting from the left-hand side, we can go ahead and swap them all to always active. Again, the timing is very important because the mechanic is very precise, so that it actually feels fluid and dynamic, rather than, you know, unresponsive and clunky like a indie game, for instance. But as you can see, we can now double jump. Everything should be working as it should, except for the collision. So actually, I'll leave that so we can see. So this is what happens when the collision doesn't check. 1, we can double jump twice, but 2, there's a little bit of fall lag, because we're impacting with the block, but it's not actually being deleted. We fix up these commands, get rid of the empty space at the back. You can see it's a lot more fluid now. We actually feel like we're falling. There's a slight second where we can double jump, but there's no actual fall lag aside from that little initial point. So there's a few things you can do to the system to tweak it or make it player gated if you wanted. So for instance, you could use the tag system. If we add into this little selector parameter of the first command block, tag equals, we'll call it DJ for double jumping. So only players with that tag can double jump. So we can no longer double jump, except that we can. Why is that? You know what? Because of previous testing, I already have the tag, don't I? Yep. Bloopers. So yeah, so we can double jump right now because we do have the DJ tag. If we went ahead and removed it, ooh, I have to type it in, we can no longer double jump. The barrier block is not being placed, and we are just a pleb who has to play normally. We give it back, and once more we are supreme and can double jump. The other thing you could do if you wanted is you could make it into triple jumping or skywalking if you would. So for instance, if you got rid of the selector parameter altogether and left at -1, now you will have to turn these 3 off and back on in their sequence, because again, this is what happens when the timing is messed up. These 3 command blocks are now operating outside of the scoreboard system, or last, allowing us to continuously jump. We stop jumping, we do fall. Another way around this is to simply change the timer. If we add the scoreboard back, so we've just gone ahead and add back the jump -1 check. So again, we can only jump, or we can jump twice, because again, they're operating outside the scoreboard system. So we've created a triple jump, possibly. No, it's still skywalk. So if we go ahead and swap them off, and this is a bit tedious, but this is why the order in which you activate them is important if you want it to be solely a double jump. Otherwise, you do get mishaps like that are not so intended. You know, could be fun little tweaks. But yeah, so if you do have any errors, just like a computer, restart it in the correct fashion as shown. And it should be a single jump now. Perfect. Yeah, so now that we have set back to normal, the other tweak you could make is if you go to the -10 and you were to increase this, say to -20. What this does is now create a longer window in which the player can jump. If you can get the timing down though. And that allows more blocks to be placed. Similarly, I think if you want to be precise about it, it's like -12 or 15 is the right amount of time to triple jump, if I could get it. It's very, very precise at this point. What if we go a little bit further? Oh, there we go. No, so 15 is a bit too much because you can see the jump does reset. For whatever reason, 10 is like perfect, and the score doesn't reset when you actually jump off of the block, the barrier block, for whatever reason. Anything higher, and then you get into the point where the system starts to sort of collapse. So again, it is very precise. 12 might be able to... No, 13. Oh, I got somewhere with that. 13 looks a bit too much. but is closer to being able to only triple jump or quadruple jump, it looks like. Oh, infinite, if you get the timing right. But yeah, they're just little tweaks you can do. If you just want a double jump system, just use the standard variation. You could also put in MBD tags if you wanted, or distances to make, you know, only certain areas be applicable for players to double jump. But other than that, that's pretty much it. I hope you found it useful and hope you enjoyed. Yeah.